I started this talk very factually, which was easy because I could just pull from his obituary that I wrote back in 2010. After a day of working on this, I was almost finished when my wife listened to it and suggested that I completely missed the mark. Dad and Deidre really adored each other, so I had to take that really seriously. On June 6th, 1937, my dad and his twin brother were born in Beardstown, Illinois, to a couple living in poverty who already had 5 children. Dad was the youngest and smallest of two twins, and he was not expected to live, but he would grow up to be very strong and healthy. There were bumps along the road, though, like having crossed eyes and bad teeth throughout his youth. They lived with food insecurity, and yet he grew up watching his mother share what they had with hobos who would get off the train regularly and come from the depot across the street and just walk into their kitchen asking for food. She shared what they had. His dad worked multiple jobs at the time, often getting about 3 hours of sleep at night so that he could keep a roof over their heads. And that background gave my dad a sensitivity towards others. He became someone who accepted people for who they are, wherever they came from, and whatever their background or past. Dad was someone who valued responsibility and trying to do the right thing. One year, he and his twin brother each got a bicycle, and Dad loved his bike and kept it clean, polished and on his kickstand. And that pride was appreciated by the thief who bypassed the other bike, dirty and lying in the grass, and took his instead. Dad would become familiar with feeling unrewarded for trying to do the right things. So he channeled his frustrations into being a hard worker and developed a dedication in his life to helping the underdogs, as he put it. So it's important to note the thief did not steal his love of bikes. My love of everything on two wheels came from him. In the 80s, he bought a motorcycle, something he'd always wanted to do as a kid. And it was a Honda CB 125S, little motorcycle. And the neighborhood parents were furious at him because they had kids my age, and he was teaching me how to ride it at age 13. I rode motorcycles for about 27 years until Ellery came along, and my lifelong love of bicycling continues, though I have yet to do the MS 150. Shortly before he was born, his mother had converted to what is now the Community of Christ Church, and the church was a very positive presence in their lives. Growing up in a family of 7 kids in tough times, they were never asked if they wanted to go to church. They went without question. He was active in Zion's League, the church choir. He attended Sunday services and midweek prayer services regularly with his family. And many times the only young people at the Wednesday prayer service were he and his siblings. So it's little wonder that my siblings and I grew up in much the same way. There were occasional Sundays where we would worship God through nature, but they were all too rare. He found the church to be a very positive influence in his life. And with my mother, he made sure that it was a positive and present influence in his children's lives as well. The church was woven into my DNA since birth. I was expected to sit up and generally pay attention, which Ellery will tell you is still the case for an Anderson kid. Dad was always working, even as a teen, and he didn't get to attend church youth camp during high school because of those responsibilities. Finally, he got to attend during his senior year, and it was a wonderful experience. He left high school wanting to be a teacher, and he served on the district youth committee. After high school, he sat out and he worked for 4 years to put his twin brother through college at Graceland, who went on to become a popular teacher and a respected principal. Finally, he was able to attend Graceland himself, and my dad went to Graceland to pursue that teaching degree, where he met my mother and fell in love. After a year and a half at Graceland, she had to move to Independence to do her clinicals and complete her RN degree. Dad transferred to Central Missouri State College to continue his education, and soon they were married. 6 months later, however, they were involved in a serious auto accident, hit by a drunk driver that left my mother with a shattered leg and other injuries. Facing big medical bills, he left college behind. He went back to the working world he knew so well. A couple of years later, I came along as the first of 3 kids, and Dad never returned to college. He worked for 27 years in wholesale plumbing distributorships. But during his years in Independence, he was a Cub Scout master for Beacon Heights congregation, working with 33 youth. And when his job transferred him to St. Joe, he was active in Junior Achievement Program for youth. So it's interesting that I gravitated towards a similar kind of life's work that he had intended to pursue himself. I think he would have loved to have had the career that I've enjoyed in youth development, if only he'd had the same opportunities that he was able to provide for me. Like many of his generation, my dad valued loyalty, sacrifice, dedication, honor, tradition, dependability, and hard work. Once he gave his loyalty to a person, organization, or cause, it never wavered. We kids never ever doubted that we were loved. Money was tight and he didn't get to finish college, but he worked with my mother to give me what I needed to complete a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a doctorate. From he grew up being told, you're just as good as everybody else, even though you're an Anderson. And that was able to transition because of his hard work and sacrifice to us telling our kids, I expect great things from you because you're an Anderson. Socially, we always assumed that my mother was carrying him. But after his death, I would learn the term ministry of presence. He knew the value of just being there. He was a big believer in the potential of people, quick to reassure others of their self-worth. His acceptance of others left people feeling connected and knowing that they belonged. It's something I've tried to emulate, and it's certainly been an inspiration. So Dad left us with timeless wisdom, with sayings like, the past is a canceled check in a future savings account. And that's the kind of thing you would expect from him. But the sayings of his that we really come back to the most are the ones that involve parenting, like, the more you stretch, the taller you get. And the more you cry, the less you pee. Yes, you heard me correctly. So it's nearly impossible to sum up someone's life and impact in a few words and photos. Those things are best understood in the ripples and reflections seen in the lives of those they touched. Though he left us in 2010, my dad's work, struggles, tough decisions, successes, joys, values, and humor continue to resonate and resurface in ways that continually remind his family that he's never really all that far away.